I know you have a lot of questions. So let's talk about it. And let me be clear. You can go either the two routes. This is not a salvation issue. And I know this is very new for many of us. And so if you feel comfortable where you've been, it's okay. You can stay there. And I don't mean that pejoratively. It's okay. But I'm introducing this because I think personally it makes a lot of sense of the biblical text. And I think it will help us to understand better the story that God is trying to tell. But let me open it up for some questions so you can clarify some of what I've said, so that you could have some responses, so that, as I've been saying, we can process it together. But one amendment to what I said last time, let's not think while we speak. Let's think and then speak. That way we'll have more time for everybody who wants to make a contribution. All right? Questions and answers. Yes, Julius.
With this whole period of narrating, do you think God's focus has been mankind from the jump?
Yeah. Right. I think that's a great question. And I think that is the point. If you even look at Genesis 1, of all the things that God creates, a lot of time is spent on the creation of humankind. And whereas God says of everything else that he creates, it is good, on day 6, after he's created humankind, it says, he looks at everything and he says it is very good. So humankind is, and then even what he does with humankind, again in Genesis 2, he breathes into humankind. God does that with nothing else. And there is no other aspect of God's creation on the earth that we're told is made in the image of God. And so I think that is clearly what the biblical writers are trying to tell us, that God is very interested in mankind. Yes?
An appendage to that would be, he has to keep resetting. What is he looking for?
Resetting, you mean mankind messes up and he tries to fix it? That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is he looking for? I think he's looking for relationship. And I think that the way the text works is that God is trying to build a space that he can dwell humankind. We're going to see as we walk through Genesis 2 that what God's intent on doing is not just dwelling in the cosmos with man, him upstairs in the heavens and us downstairs here on earth. His plan is to bring heaven and earth together so that man and God can be in the same room and can dwell together for eternity. And we mess that up. And the biblical story is about God keep trying to reset, as you put it. Keep trying to get that back on track. So it tells us that what is very important to God is that he has a relationship with us. Now, someone think about that. Someone think about that. Of all the things in your Christian life, the one thing that God is interested in is a relationship with you. Not what you do or which church you go, or, the thing that he's interested in is a relationship with each one of us. That's worth a lot of meditation. All right. I'm going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Leonard, you're next, and then Lydia.
Yeah. A lot of people getting, when people read the book of Genesis.
I'm sorry, go again.
When people read the book of Genesis,
Yes.
they're trying to figure out where does the other people came from.
Yes.
So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Right. So I think there are one or two ways to explain that. We are told in Genesis 5 that Adam and Eve have other children. And so what some suggest is that in the course of time, if you're living like Adam does, 930 years, you just plot the math in terms of exponential increase. That could be a whole heap of people. And perhaps Cain marries one of his sisters. And this is prior to the Levitical laws, which prohibit relationships between brother and sister. And so it would have been possible. That would not have been against the law at the time. That's one theory. The other theory is that, as I said, what we're dealing with in Genesis 2 is not the creation of the only humans, but God taking a special human and putting in a temple, really, as a priest for all the others. And so Genesis 1, God creates humankind. And so Adam and Eve and their family really are not the only humans. So when Cain leaves Eden and he goes east, what he's meeting are people who are not his family members. That is one view. And again, this is not a matter of salvation. You got to figure out what works better for you. I have some problems with the first view that he's going to have kids with his sister, because I think the whole point was that he's been sent away from his family. He's going to the land of Nod. He's supposed to wander away from them. And I think out there what he does is he encounters people who are other than his family. But again, as we read in the Bible, remember that we're looking through a window. And we've got to be careful that we don't get so focused on the details that we're wondering, as I put it, is it wood or UPVC? We're supposed to try to see the big picture of what God is telling us about who he is. And there's some details we just won't be able to completely answer. But I think we can wrestle with it and try to figure out what works best. Thanks for that question, Leonard. I believe Lydia was next.
I just want to thank you for this time, because I am thinking in my mind, I have tried reading the book of Genesis,
Yes.
and I couldn't see the things that I am learning now.
Yes.
I remember even at one point I came to you and you were explaining something to me, but when I'm reading, I just stop, because it was making sense to me.
Yeah.
So I really, really appreciate it. But I'm wondering, how could I have read it to learn the things that we are learning now?
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Lydia. And I do remember the conversation where you actually came up to me and said, Genesis 2, and you're like, and I said, there are two creation accounts. And that created a bigger question I could see. When I said it, I was like, So I think what you're expressing is experience of all of us as we read parts of the Bible. There are things that confuse us. And just like you, Lydia, what we do when we encounter those things, many of us will just put them aside. We have a closet for the things in the Bible we don't understand. And sometimes that closet's so full that when we open it, all kind of things are pour out on us, right? But what we need to do is to try to wrestle with those things. To your question as to how would you understand these things? Well, it's kind of like Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. You know, the guy says, Philip says, do you understand what you're reading? And he said, how can I, unless someone explains it to me? And the nature of how God has revealed himself is it takes humility for us to understand those things. The things that I'm sharing with you, I've learned from other people. God did not speak them into my head at night as I slept. I've read a lot of different things. And my role is to take those things and to try to package it in a way that can help others in the church without causing them to struggle. And so I would say how you learn is by continuing to study and realizing no matter how long you've been a Christian, you don't know everything. And there's more that you need to be taught. You have to retain that posture of the Ethiopian eunuch. You don't say, well, when we become a Christian, we know everything. You've got to have the posture of continuing to learn. And there are lots of great resources out there. And sometimes we need guidance as to what is good, because some of the stuff out there is harmful. But we have to remain learners so that God can teach us and we can make sense of the parts that we feel like, let's stop reading that part. Which is why many of us don't read the Old Testament. Too confusing. So we leave it alone. But there are riches that are there to be mined. And so we have to grapple with it. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, you're welcome. Marlon, you were next? Mm-hmm.
Question, observation. I appreciate the second viewing.
Yes.
Because when I look back at the genealogy in
Yes.
Luke
Yes.
and Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
for them to link Jesus back to Adam, so it's like God's intent is like, okay, this book is really about Jesus, and I'm just linking it back to Adam. So for there being other people there,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. He wasn't making a point that, okay, these are the first and only people. It's just that Adam links to Jesus,
Yeah.
which is the the point of the story.
Right. I appreciate that, Marlon. And that takes me back to the very first in our series. I think it was Ozzy who asked then. It may have been Ozzy. Well, if they didn't all come from Adam, how are we told, Paul says, from one man God created every nation on the earth? And I pointed out then that that is, in a sense, a reference to Noah. Because when you read Genesis 10, what happens is, you have the flood, everything wipe out. And then you have Noah. And from Noah, we're told all these nations are created. But even if we're going through Noah, Noah goes all the way back to Adam. Because notwithstanding all the other people all over the place, everybody else wiped out, but we're focusing in on Noah, who is the only descendant of Adam who remained. So yes, you're right. The point of the authors of genealogies, regardless of what happened, we come through Adam. But even that passage about from one man, God created every nation on the earth, we can reconcile it with this view if we remember that there was a flood and that at the point of Noah, all nations came through him. Yeah, great. I'll take one or two more. 1, 2, and then one. Yeah, Angela, you go ahead, please. Yeah, you are next. Yeah.
I just want to say how much I appreciate this time, because before, when I had the questions, I would just say, well, when I go to heaven now, one day, I remember one day my son said to me, Mom, that's blind faith. And I said to him, well, I prefer to have blind faith than no faith at all. So I really appreciate, now I can answer people, I can answer my son, I can be confident in knowing that, what the creation is, what the different steps were. So I just want to tell it how so much I appreciate this time.
Thanks for sharing that, Angela. And like I said to Lydia, that is all of our experience. You're not alone in feeling that there are things that we don't understand. There are questions that I have that are unanswered right now. And I used to say, when I get to heaven, I'll ask God. But I suspect that when I get to heaven, I won't be asking questions. I think I'm going to just be in such a state of wonder that it'll be okay. And maybe God will tell me, maybe he won't. But yeah, thanks for articulating what is many of our experience with the Bible. The Bible it's a difficult book to understand in places. There's things that are quite clear and easy to understand, but we've got to be honest. There are things that we have to wrestle with, and that's what these times are about, wrestling with the difficult things. Yes, Paul, please.
Yeah, just a comment.
Sure.
A question. Well, thanks for taking the time out to really explain, and putting out there the different theories.
Yes.
The comment, it is amazing to understand how God saw the beginning, saw the end just as clearly as he saw the beginning, and he prepared for us. And I'm just in awe of that.
Yeah.
Of that. Question:
Yeah.
when you said God created one special man, or
Yeah.
placed one special man in the garden,
Yeah.
explain special.
Yeah.
Clarify.
Right. So special simply because out of all the others, he put this one in there. It's not Adam is better than anybody else. It is that he is a priest. And the nature of a priest is he represents others before God. So Adam is our representative, kind of like you elect a president or a delegate to go somewhere. He speaks on your behalf. And whatever choices he makes there, so it has consequences for everybody else. And I think what we're going to see as we study out what Eden is, I think it will be very clear that what Eden is a temple or a sacred space, and that God is putting Adam in there with Eve to serve as priests in that special place. All right, I'm going to take you quickly, Devon, and then we're going to move on. Please, go ahead.
That's one question.
Sure.
So you're saying it's possible there is more than one Garden of Eden at creation?
No, I'm not saying that.
It's possible, not possible.
I'm saying that what the biblical story is telling us is that God creates everything, and in ordering the cosmos, he creates a dry land Okay? And then the story focuses in, it moves from the big picture of heaven and earth and the sea to the dry land. Okay? And on the dry land, as we're going to see, in a very special part of the dry land called Eden, which is in the east, God creates a garden and he puts a man in that garden.
Just one.
Yes, just one. That's what you wanted to ask?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, later, and then I'm going to move on. Nobody else put your hand up. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, does that mean when he decided to create Eve in that space because he didn't want to go back and take people from, because he wants to create that space separate, so instead of picking some lady from outside, he decided to create something new and fresh from inside?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have to think about it some more, but my initial response would be that the creation of Adam and Eve is telling us something about the relationship between male and female. And what God is trying to tell us in that story with Adam and Eve, who represent all of us. Their names mean human and living. That's what their names mean. Eve means living or life, and Adam means human or man. And so what God is doing is he's taking these two individuals who represent, we can find all of ourselves in them, and telling us something about the nature of the relationship between man and woman. Because woman comes from out of man's side. But that is a little bit later on in the class. Hopefully that will be a little clearer. But what we do know is that God created Eve from Adam's side, and he didn't go outside the garden and bring somebody in. I think he was making a point to Adam. Yeah? All right. Okay, so we're going to move on. And